Everyone, our notes today are going to be over conversions, fractions, decimals, and percents. First, we're going to do fractions to decimals. The only step that you have to do in order to change a fraction to a decimal is to divide the numerator by the denominator. So an example would be 3/4. 3 is your numerator, your top number, and 4 is your denominator, your bottom number. So you will be dividing 3 by 4. So you know 4 won't go into 3, so we're going to add a 0, place a decimal behind the 3, bring the decimal up, add a 0 behind the decimal, and you have 30. 4 will go into 30 7 times, which is 28. 30 minus 28 is 2. We'll add another 0 and bring it down. 4 will go into 25 times. So 3/4, written as a decimal, is 75 hundredths. Another example would be 1/3. So you would be dividing 1 by 3. And 3 will not go into 1, so we're going to add a 0 up top, put a decimal after the 1, bring the decimal up, and then add a 0 after the decimal. 3 will go into 10 3 times, which is 9. 10 minus 9 is 1. I'm going to add a 0 and bring it down, and then I have 10 again. So I know that this is going to continue. So I'm going to need to use a repeating line. So 1/3 is equal to 3/10 repeating. Next, we're going to do decimal to fraction. We're going to write the steps down. So step 1, is remove the decimal. Step 2, rewrite as a fraction. Remembering place value. And the last step is simplify if necessary. So our example is going to be 5/10. So if you notice, 5 is in the 10th place. So I'm going to write 5 as my numerator, and then underneath I'm going to write 10 because my 5 is in the 10th place. So we're going to simplify if necessary, and in this case we can. I have 5/10, and if I divide my numerator and my denominator both by 5, I will get 1/2. So 5/10 is equal to 1/2. Another example would be 2 9/100. So our 9 is in the hundredths place. My 2 is a whole number. My 2 stays a whole number. I'm only writing my 9/100 as a fraction, which would be 9/100. And in this case, we cannot simplify. Now we're going to go over decimal to percent. So you're going to write down steps. And the first step is going to be move the decimal 2 places to the right. The second step would be to put a percent sign at the end. So we'll do an example that is 65/100. I'm going to take my decimal, I'm going to move it 2 times to the right, and then I'm going to drop my decimal and add a percent sign. Another example would be 279 thousandths. So I'm still moving my decimal 2 places to the right. I don't move it all the way to the end, just 2 places to the right. And now I have 27 9/10%. So you need to make a note that if there is an empty place, you need to add a 0. So an example would be 4/10. I'm going to move my decimal 2 places to the right. I have an empty spot, so I'm going to add a 0. So my 4/10 written as a percent is 40%. Next, we're doing percent to decimal. Step 1 is going to be replace the percent sign with a decimal. Step 2, move the decimal two times to the left. So you need to make a note that if there is already a decimal, move it two times to the left. So if there's already a decimal, you're not going to add another one. You're just going to use the one that's there. So if there's already a decimal there, you're going to move that decimal two times to the left. So don't add another one, we're using the one that's there. So our first example is 45%. So we're going to replace our percent sign with a decimal, move it 2 places to the left, and our 45% becomes 45 hundredths. If I have 11 and 9/10%, I'm going to drop my percent sign, but I already have a decimal. So I'm going to move the decimal that I already have 2 places to the left. So 11 and 9/10% written as a decimal is 119 thousandths. So now we are doing percent to fraction. All the steps in these conversions are simple. It's only 1, 2, or 3 steps in order to do the conversions. So when you're going from percent to fraction, you're going to take the number and put it over 100. So the percent that you're given, that you're changing to the fraction, is the numerator. And 100, which means percent, is the denominator. And then, of course, you're going to simplify if necessary. So an example would be 75%. So you're going to take your percent, which is 75, it's your numerator, and you're going to put it over 100, which is your denominator. You're going to simplify if you can, and in this case we can divide both by 25. So 75 100ths actually reduces to 3/4. So 75% is equal to 3/4. We'll do one more example, and that is 3%. I'm going to take my percent and I'm going to put it over 100. And I will simplify if I can, but in this case I cannot. So 3% is actually equal to 3/100. So the last one that we're going to do is fraction to percent. So the steps are, number 1, change the fraction to a decimal. And then step 2, change the decimal to a percent. So our example is 6 4/5. I'm going from fraction to percent. I'm not worried about my whole number, which is 6. I'm worried about the fraction part of my number, which is 4/5. So first I'm going to divide my numerator, which is 4, by my denominator, which is 5. And I'm going to add that to my whole number. So I now have 6 8/10. Now I have to change my decimal to a percent by moving the decimal 2 places to the right. So my 6 8/10 becomes 680%. And that ends our notes or our review on conversions.